It's 4:30 and time for the Murray City Municipal Council Committee of the Whole for September 7th, 2021. And we'll start out with approval. First of all, council members are present except for Rosalba Dominguez, and she'll be coming in a little bit late. So now we can continue with the approval of the minutes for the Committee of the Whole, July 6, 2021, and the Committee of the Whole for July 20th, 2021. Are there any changes, comments, a motion? I'll make a motion together.
Okay, I'll do them together. I'll move that we approve the Committee of the Whole, both meetings, July 6th and July 20th, 2021.
All right, all in favor? I need a second first.
I'll second.
Thanks. Now, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Let's go to discussion items. The first one is the Power Department Quarterly Report. Blaine Hackey, welcome. And you have plenty of time, so.
You gave me an extra 15 minutes.
I know. It's because we love having you here, and it's been a while. So
I hope we can talk about some things that will be of interest to you. Is this working? Okay, sometimes you can hear it, but okay. Thanks for the extra 15 minutes. I don't get to meet with you very often, every 3 or 4 months. I think I can fill the 45. I'm sure I can.
Have no doubt. That's why we.
Can I make it interesting? I don't know, but I can sure fill 45. I thought today, I'll go over the quick agenda and then we'll go into some more detail. I thought we'd talk about the UAMPS summer retreat that we had, maybe get your thoughts on it a little bit, and maybe give you some of my takeaways. I thought also we'd talk about a report on, the department in general, outages we've had, a report on the electric vehicle charger that we just installed at the park. Thought you might be interested in what's happening there. Talk about some of the UAMPS projects that are coming down the way that we might be interested in. If we have time, I'll talk about the UAMPS small nuclear project, even though we're not part of it. I thought it might be of interest to tell you what I know about it, which is not a lot. The most important item I think we'll talk about in the next little while will be the CRSP, and I'll define these terms, the WAPA drought situation at Lake Powell, because that is going to affect Murray in a big way at our pocketbook. And I'll explain a little bit how that's going to come around and hurt us if it doesn't rain. And then just some employee issues I thought we'd talk about. So first of all, I thought we'd talk about the Squaw Valley / I think they've renamed it Alpine Meadows. I think it was ongoing. Alpine Meadows. I appreciate 4 of the 5 council members coming. Kat, we'll catch you next time. How's that? No problems. No problems. A few of the takeaways I got, and I don't know, you sat in on the same meetings. I appreciate the attendance of the council there. And we also had some city staff there as well. You sat in on the same meetings I did, but there are 4 items that I had a takeaway on, and maybe they're the same as you. One of them was the report from Denton, Texas. The fellow gave a report on how the cold, frigid, cold wave of February of last year really affected that utility. Remember, all of Texas was under 30 degrees, and he talked about the dire straits that they had down there. The machinery that was freezing up, the gas supply that was suddenly closed down, no generation was available, there were rolling blackouts, the whole state that is usually balmy and somewhat moderate at that time of year suddenly just turned to the worse. He talked about how that city going into the storm had $105 million in reserves. That was for a rainy day fund or some type of emergency fund that they could rely on. At the end of the storm, which was a couple of weeks, end of the spell, they figured that Denton, Texas spent $150 million on restoring power, on getting their...
How much again?
$150 million. And they had $105 million in reserves going into it. If I've got those numbers right, $106 million. And so they had to come up with $45 million. And they did that, if I remember right, through a commercial line of credit, commercial paper line of credit. And they're hoping that some of that funds would come from FEMA eventually, but FEMA money usually comes in months, if not years after the fact, because there's a lot of reporting and processing that has to take place. So what that taught me was the value of reserves and the value of having a little bit of money in the bank. Here in Murray, we feel like we have a good reserve fund. And Brenda could tell you more detail than I could about that. But we've tried to build a little bit of a nest egg or put money away for a fund where we might have to spend it someday. Now, I'm not saying we're not going to get the freezing temperatures Denton did, but we may get the earthquake, or we may get a tornado or something that's going to wipe out a substation. We have 5 substations around the city, and each of those substations are probably valued at $5 or $6 million. And, just a quick tornado up through the mall area, like we almost had a couple of weeks ago with that wind, but that could wipe out $5 or $6 million that we'd have to come up with. So Denton, Texas taught me the value of having a reserve fund out there. He also taught me about the value of record keeping. He talked about how FEMA requires a whole bunch of background information. And if we ever have to do that, I mean, it's going to be controlled chaos. There's no doubt that when you have a catastrophe like that, it's going to be pretty tough to handle. He talked about the communication between the employees, the customers, and the city staff and the media, and how all that is going to come down into play. Now, I hope we never have to deal with that. I really do, but that's the case. He talked about gas was $3 a decatherm going into the storm, and it got to be $700 a decatherm by the end of the storm. I don't know what percentage increase that is, but it's astronomical. We're paying about $4.50 a decatherm here in Utah right now. They were buying it at $3, and by the end of February, they're paying $700 if they could get the generation started. So anyway, I think maybe some of you had the same conversation with Dan. I know that I talked to Doug Hill as well, and that was one thing that he brought out of what he took away from Squaw Valley was Denton, Texas, and just the experience that poor utility had. The other thing I thought was interesting.
I'm just thinking when you were talking about that, I remember him saying something also like something to the effect that the residents could care less what you were using to make the power work. They just wanted it to work.
Yeah. Oil,
they needed it. Yeah, they didn't care what it was. They needed it to survive. And I thought that was interesting because, we all have different ideas of what we want, not just us, our residents. And yet when it goes out,
right,
we just care that it goes back on,
right,
and how fast.
And we've been told that by some of our key accounts, our key customers here in this city. And I'll use the big box across the street here. A 3 or 4 hour outage to them could be catastrophic, and a day long could be all of their frozen products would be gone, millions of dollars of inventory. You can guarantee that they would have something to say to us if we had a prolonged outage like that. So I think that's the same way. They will pay anything when a catastrophe hits, just like you just mentioned, Brett. So thanks. We had 4 state regulators that talked about how things are going in their city, their state. I know Utah was one of them, Tom Carter from the governor's office. And they talked about their approach to climate change, environmental portfolios and resources. I think Utah and maybe Idaho were a little more moderate. The other 2 were a little more aggressive on some of their thinking. I think Utah not having a required portfolio percentage standard for renewable energy is to our benefit. I think a lot of the utilities, Murray included, have over 50% of our energy coming from a renewable resource already. The hydro, the landfill, and those types of things. And we're doing it on our own, is what I'm trying to say. We don't need the regulation, I think, from state and other places where they're going to require us to do a certain amount of renewables. I think we're doing that on their own, whereas some of the states are taking a more aggressive approach. Remember, Ryan Huntington gave a talk about cyber security. I thought that was fascinating. He ran out of time. In fact, he took a lot of other people's time too. But he talked about phone scammers and those types of things. I wanted him to keep going. I'm going to give a plug for the UAMPS toolkit meeting that's going to be the end of September. I think you might be on the calendar. Jennifer, did the council get noticed on that from UAMPS? Okay. You will get noticed. What a toolkit is UAMPS is going to combine a afternoon meeting to combine with a League of Cities and Towns meeting. I believe it's uptown on September 28th at the Hilton. And they've had good luck in the past on having some of the councils that are UAMPS members come to an afternoon meeting and talk about UAMPS issues. And so if you're interested in that type of thing, you'll get an invitation, and it's just 3 or 4 hours in the afternoon. I think it's September 28th. But Ryan's going to finish his presentation. So that's a little bit of a teaser. He's going to talk about cyber security and that type of thing. So I thought it was fascinating. And the last thing I learned wasn't really so much from the conference, but I've learned that UAMPS is becoming more diverse than we had before. Before, it was a total Utah organization, very conservative, very middle central Utah. And now we've added a lot of other states in, and a lot of other cities from other states. And the thinking of UAMPS is a little bit different, I think, than it was 30 years ago when we just got power from Lake Powell and we just skipped down the road and that was it. But now we're having to go out and find some different resources. And I'm finding that UAMPS is having to bring some of these other states, cities in to make this the small nuclear project work. Now, that's not bad or good. I'm just saying I'm seeing different people around the table than I had seen before. And there's so many new members that are coming into UAMPS, I don't recognize a lot of the faces. And I've been up there 12 or 13 years. What I'm saying is UAMPS is changing their, not behavior, attitude really, but just changing their persona, their demographics. And so we'll just watch that and see how that goes. I don't think we want another state's agenda running UAMPS, I guess is what I'm trying to say, nor am I implying that's happening. I just saw a lot of people I didn't know, and I thought I knew everybody at UAMPS. So anyway, so that's my thoughts on UAMPS. And maybe, Diane, if we have some time at the end of my 45 minutes, if you want to talk about the UAMPS conference, or do you want to weigh in now on just how you felt about it? I know this should be a one-way meeting, perhaps.
No, I really enjoyed it, and I always learn when I go to those conferences. And same with this one. I thought they did a really good job, and
They did too.
balanced it well. I wish they would have had more on environmental issues. They didn't,
Didn't touch the nuclear one at all, did they?
no,
They really didn't talk small nuclear at all, nor much about wind.
no.
But
Yeah. So, I mean, I would have liked to have had a little more information on those issues.
yeah.
But
They did talk about the green hydrogen a little bit, the hydrogen plant,
yeah,
and that
that's true. And that was,
and that's going to that's us in the IPA. That's us. So
yeah, that was interesting. I'd like to know more about that, actually. So what about you guys? What did you?
I thought some of the stuff you talked about, especially the Texas experience that they had. I'll tell you, it was, I mean, from someone that, here in Utah, and we heard about it back when it happened, and then to have someone that relived it for us by talking about it, it was fascinating, but also scary to think that, what do we have, 30 million? What are our reserves?
around 30 million.
Yeah, 30 million over there, and that could be gone like that.
Yep.
And that was a wake-up call, because, you have some people say, oh, why do you have this money in reserves? And, oh, there's a reason why we have that money in reserves, because of what just happened. But, and then the cyber gentleman, I thought he was kind of a comedian, to be honest with you. He handled that beautifully, and I'm looking forward to hear from him. He was great.
I'll make sure
All of them were great. They were all
make sure you
good.
get the information, Jennifer. Okay. Great.
Dale,
Thank you.
what do you think?
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. It was a good conference, and the two things I liked were the cyber and just overall being able to talk to other people from other cities, be able to network a little bit. I think it was a success. I was a little disappointed in the fact you couldn't keep the smoke out of there. I thought you had more drag than that. But other than that, it was great.
I think we left at just the right time, because then
Didn't we? Yeah.
it really came in.
Yeah,
then
we
the
did.
fires
next
really
2
came
weeks.
in. That was,
Well, thanks again for your attendance. And Kat, that's just a teaser. Next time, if you're interested.
yeah,
We got you.
they're really good and informative. And
Thank you. I thought we'd talk about the EV chargers, electric vehicle chargers. They were put into, remember, we got an award from the state. We received $157,000 award for putting EV chargers in a public parking lot or public area. we were granted that award, and that was part of the VW Volkswagen nationwide payout, I guess, for some of the stuff that VW did that was unscrupulous or scrupulous, whichever. So we put 3 chargers in at the Park Center. It took a little bit of doing, a little bit of logistical issues. We had to put a new transformer in and do a little bit of service on our own. May 12th of this year, we put the chargers in service. We have 1 fast DC charger, and each charger unit has 2 plugs. So 3 times 2 is 6. So 6 cars could show up. 4 with a moderate or level 2 charger, and 1 with the 2 fast chargers. Now, fast charger can charge a car in about 20 minutes, whereas a level 2 charger is closer to 2 or 3 hours. It's interesting to see so far with 4 or 5 years, or 4 or 5 months, 3 months of use, what's happening. So first of all, let me go over the numbers. We spent $141,000 from the state, gave us that. We won the award for $157,000. We didn't spend it all. But we did $15,000 of our own pocket. It was a shared deal. We had to do some boring and that type of thing, and put a new transformer in that would beef it up. We ended up giving the state 38 pages of documents to get this crazy money back. What we thought would be an easy award, and usually when it's a government award, you get red tape, and we are government ourselves, I guess, in a way. Some would say we do it ourselves. But it took Matt Young's a lot of effort to get the documentation. We finally got the money. Were you going to say something, Brad? Oh, okay. So we have got paid for it. Now, this is what's happening so far. In May, we had 54 visits. In June, we had 98 visits. In July, we had 120 visits. In August, we dropped down to 93. So that's only 2 or 3 a day, maybe 4 a day. I think we'll catch on. I think people will end up using it more. The revenue we have received so far for our rate, our EV charger rate, is about $750. We don't expect to pay back on this anyway. This is kind of a public service type of deal, but I think we'll catch on. But we're seeing about 100 visits a month on those things, and we'll watch that every month. I report to the mayor every month on that. People aren't knocking down the walls to get in there yet, and I don't know even who goes there. Are they pickleball players? Are they rec center players? Are they people that work at the hospital and charge the car while they're working? I don't know, but anyway, we'll watch that. It's kind of fun to see that. Next thing I thought, and this is probably the most important discussion item we'll talk about tonight, is the CRSP, or the drought. Remember, CRSP stands for Colorado River Storage Project, and that is basically the federal dams on the Colorado River that market the power. The dams were built in the 60s, early 60s, and almost as an afterthought, I say almost, they put hydroelectric facilities beneath the dam, so they captured, the energy of falling water. Murray and other cities in the area, I guess, divvied up or signed up for federal power back in 1964. At that time, hydropower was expensive. It was a lot more expensive than coal. And some people thought that maybe Murray had ordered too much because we already had coal resources. It turns out that the hydropower that has been a boom to Murray and other cities. It's about a $30 a megawatt hour cost, and our coal-fired production is usually in the $50 range. So those tables have been turned. Federal hydro is by far the cheapest. But with it comes things like the drought. In the Deseret News several weeks ago, they had an article called Anatomy of a Drought, and they had a centerfold. West, gripped by drought, Mother Nature isn't letting go, has pictures of Lake Mead and those types of things. I want to read a little bit about that because this is going to affect our power production. Drought's gripping 17 states in 95% of the service area of the Bureau of Reclamation. It's become so severe at Utah's Lake Powell, emergency releases were instituted from 3 upstream reservoirs to prop up its levels and to help keep power production functioning at Glen Canyon Dam, which produces enough power for 336,000 households. That's not people, that's households. So 1 million people, perhaps. The Bureau of Reclamation announced water reductions of 18% for Arizona, 7% for Nevada, and Mexico got cut by 5%. And one of the Bureau people said, we are seeing the effects of climate change in the Colorado River Basin through drought, extreme temperatures, expensive wildfires, and some places flooding and landslides. And the Colorado River storage is only at 40%. We're getting to dire straits on the level of the production. Right now, the lake is at 3,525 feet, which is 35 feet above the critical point where water goes into the intake for the hydro. So if I remember right, it's about 120 feet below full. And if we go another 35 feet, we're sucking air and there's no more hydro production. There's different levels of where that's going to go before they, I guess, call it quits, you might say. Level 1 emergency has already taken place. We reached the 35 feet above the intake, and that's why they're releasing more water from Blue Mesa, Navajo, and Flaming Gorge. They're trying to get water down to Lake Powell and eventually Lake Mead. It's an emergency strategy. Now, Lake Powell is huge compared to even Flaming Gorge. Flaming Gorge is a drop in the bucket to some of these. So there will be several other stages of emergency that might have to take place. And I don't know what levels that is, but let's say another 10 feet, they're going to start mandating no more water for farmers or whatever the case may be. I don't know what other emergency levels they have. But we've reached the point where the federal government's getting a little worried about contractually giving us the power that we've had since 1964. We have a set amount of energy and capacity that we get from them based on the month and based on the season. And that's why you see, if you've ever river rafted below the dams, you'll see the flows go different from night to day. And that's because they will open up the gates to run more energy through the dams during the daytime when the customers need it. And then during the nighttime, they'll taper off a little bit. That's becoming more of a norm where it's tapering off quite a bit. So right now we're watching negotiations. I've listened to quite a few Zoom calls between the water users, the electrical producers, the federal government, the farmers, and anybody else who wants to weigh in on this, as how we're going to keep the production going and what's going to happen if we run out of federal hydro. Now, our federal hydro is about 30% of our portfolio. 30% of the energy that comes into the city comes from Glen Canyon Dam. If we lose that 30%, we've got to go get it from somewhere else, or we've got to pay a premium on that. So this is what's happening with the negotiations that are going on right now. They're going to, they meaning the feds, are going to publish something in the Federal Register that will increase our costs by 20%. They've decided on 20 or 25%, starting December 1st. And I've also heard October 1st. They're kind of negotiating the day. So automatically, the price for energy is going to go up 20 to 25%. In addition to that, they're negotiating whether to take our allocation away, or at least partially allocation, maybe give us 60% of what we thought, or 70% of what we thought we were going to get. At any rate, our $5 million CRSP budget in the city budget is going to go up 20%. And let's use October 1st on October 1st. We're going to pay 20% more for the power we get, and we might get 20% less. So it's, with that calculation of a $5 million budget, it's going to be about another $1 million that we're going to have to come up with by June 30th of next year. So what did you learn from Denton, Texas? What are reserves for?
I'm saying, yeah, that's what I said earlier.
Yeah, we have reserves to fall back on if we have to, if that's the route we want to take. I don't think we want to do a knee-jerk reaction and go for rate increase for everybody. I think we've got enough buffer we can play that. Now, they're proposing this rate will be for 2 years, hoping that the drought will come back and get a little more water in Lake Powell. So for next 2 years, we're going to see a 20% rate increase on our CRSP power. We have no idea how much we might lose, but this is our strategy. There's a couple ways we can come up with the kilowatt hours we won't get. One, we could buy from the market. We could go out and actually talk to traders on the energy market and say, we want to buy this chunk of energy that we were getting from Lake Powell, and we want to buy it from you. And this might be a coal-fired producer, it might be wind, it might be whoever. and they might have a price. Now, it's not going to come in as cheap as federal, but we'll at least have kilowatt hours in our hand where we can provide people power rather than giving them brownouts. The second option would be to go to UAMPS and have them negotiate for us for our missing kilowatt hours. And sometimes UAMPS will, they have more numbers to play with. If a Logan and a Bountiful and a Kaysville and Heber all wanted some amount, they'll go to the market, and because it's a bigger chunk, they'll get a cheaper rate. So we can go by ourselves and get something, or we can combine with some of the UAMPS members and get some. The other one would be to talk to UAMPS members in particular, like Idaho Falls or something like that might have a little surplus. Idaho Falls peaks in the winter. We peak in the summer. It's a pretty good mix. Maybe we can trade kilowatt hours back and forth. Just an idea. Fourth option would be to run our turbines. We often wonder what the value of our gas turbines are out here on 48 South, right 200 yards from my office. And sometimes we don't run those turbines for 9 months out of the year. And then during the summer months, we just make hay while the sun shines because we just produce a lot with those. And that's one thing we could do is just run our turbines to make up the difference for the federal hydro. We could run our turbines using a couple of different options. I don't want to bore you with it, but we could buy gas on the market way ahead of time so we know what that cost is, or we could just buy gas on the day market. And we've had good luck both ways, but we'd have to get some long-term gas contracts in. The other thing would be to call back IPA. Remember, that's our ace in the hole back in Delta. Right now, it's coming in around $60 a megawatt hour. Yeah. So still, that's twice what we pay for federal hydro, but $60 is probably less than we'd get on the market. I bet you we'd buy in the market for 80 or so. That's really high because everybody else that has crisp power is going to be clamoring for the same kilowatt hour. So I think the IPA callback might be an option we could do. Now I don't want to paint too dire of a situation right now. We've got enough to cover for at least the 9 months or so. But if this drought continues for 2 or 3 years, we'll be coming back and saying we need to do something. And our reserves might not be enough. We might have to do an emergency situation with whatever. I'm not going to mention that because it might get into the media. But we might have to do that. And the last thing would be do nothing. Just see what happens, and that's not our option. So those are the things. We need to remember Denton, Texas, and the value of reserves, and keep our reserves up so that we can cover any problem that might come into play.
Lane?
Yeah.
What about the solar? Does that help at all, or are we?
That'll help. We have a 5 megawatt solar contract that comes in 2022. To give you an idea, that's 5 megawatts, 5,000 kilowatts. We're going to lose about 25,000 kilowatts or 25 megawatts from the federal government. So it'll cover a fifth of what we lost. But yeah, that would help.
So it helps, but it doesn't. That's a great question that I asked because it's not a save all by any means. It's just a 5%.
Right. Even if we signed up for more solar right now, let's say we had 100% cover our federal needs, we still have the nighttime issues we have to deal with because we have to use federal power for nighttime as well. So it's a partial answer, I think, Diane. We can probably do some stuff like that. And there's some other projects that UAMPS has coming down the pike we might be able to play with. But I like the idea of having a portfolio that's well balanced, and 5 megawatts of solar is going to work for us. And it's coming on next spring, which is probably pretty good timing. Yeah. If we have this drought, at least it's going to help cover part of it. I think our ace in the hole is the turbines. I think that's really.
Is there any? Obviously, there's no fortune telling here, but is there any idea of what they're saying as far as the drought? Is this as far as what we've seen in the future or in the past? What's taken place as far as how long these droughts last? They don't seem to go more than 2 years, do they? Or on the.
Well. Yeah, they started filling the dams in 64. Right. This is the lowest it's been since 64, 65 or 66. Your guess is as good as mine, Brad. That's why they're putting this 2-year temporary rate increase in play. They don't want to make it permanent, but it may be.
But we'll know more next year then on it.
Absolutely. Okay. I'm in a Zoom call about once every week, just listening. We're not an active participant because we're small potatoes when it comes to the Bureau of Reclamation. But we do have a firm called CREDA, which stands for Colorado River Energy Distribution Agency, I think, that are our lobbyists. They lobby on all of the municipals' behalf in front of WAPA, which is the Western Area Power Administration. So we do have a lobbyist that has helped us in the past keep rate decreases down. And they are our lobby voice, and they're watching our efforts pretty heavy. So, all right, next I thought we'd talk about what's happened this summer. We've had an interesting summer. It's been sweltering hot. Our hydro has not produced much or anything this summer. We've had some issues up there with the bearings, but also we had no water. There just hasn't been any water coming down. Our hydro is 35 years old, and we are in the process of going through a study from Bowen and Collins, a firm that's going to come and give us some ideas of what we can do up there. Do we put money back into a 35-year hydro, 35-year-old hydro, or do we do some minor revamps? And we're looking forward to that study. It's going to be done by the end of September. And it's going to give us a good clear, how much more money do we put into old machinery, or do we just buy new machinery and go for it? Good thing about hydro is the fuel is free. Once it's in, the capital costs are sunk, and the rest of it is a freebie, as long as the water keeps flowing. But this year has not been a good year for that at all. We have been running our turbines like crazy. June 15th was the third day of 100-degree temperatures we had in June. And finally, the customer said, we've had enough. We're starting the air conditioners. And so June 15th, we've started setting new records. We ran our turbines for the first time on June 15th. Usually we won't start our turbines till July. So we're starting them early. In June, we ran them 11 days, and we peaked at 100.5 megawatts, which is the highest peak we've ever had in June. In July, we ran our turbines. When I say turbines, we have 3 of them, about 30 megawatts total, 10 megawatts apiece. We ran them 22 of 31 days in July, and in August, we ran them 17 of 31. We rarely ran them in weekends. Usually our Saturday, Sunday lows were down a little bit. We were able to buy in the market. So we bought gas at the 1st of June around $2.50 a decatherm, and now today we paid $4.75. So natural gas prices basically doubled this summer. Still, that's a decent price. At $4.75 a decatherm, we can generate for about $70 a megawatt hour. So when we run now, we're running at $70, and the pool better be higher than that, or I'm going to get on my dispatchers. Now, they shouldn't be generating if they can buy it cheaper out there. So what they do is they look on the market and say, oh, my threshold is $60. I can run for $60. If it's 90, I'm going to go ahead and run the turbines. If it's 55, I'm not going to run the turbines. So that's a strategy we take. 10 o'clock in the morning, we'll start up one turbine, 10 megawatts. And then as our load comes up, we look at the market out there at noon, we'll start another turbine. And at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, if the market is still high, we'll run the third turbine. And we run them all the way through 10, 11, sometimes midnight, and turn them off in the same order that we turned them on. So between 2 and 10 p.m., we had 3 turbines on most of those days I told you about. And it's hard to tell you what that cost is right now, how much we saved. I did a back of the napkin type of calculation that if we were generating at $50 and the market was $100, we saved about $300,000 a month. So I'm going to say $1 million. We saved $1 million this year, general numbers, by running the turbines rather than just buying off the market. So the value of the turbines, I don't know. It's a $20 million plant. We made, like I said, we didn't make $1 million, but we didn't spend $1 million this year. We did that for 20 years. We'd call it break even. But there's other values of the turbines too, like backup to black, Rocky Mountain Power, black issues and those types of things. So I think we basically banked a cool $1 million this year by running the turbines, and they've run great. To Paul Dornsoro, who's our chief mechanic, to his credit, he's had them going. We had a little bit of issue with one of them shutting down because it got too hot, but we've fast figured that out. So anyway, summer 2020 on. We ran yesterday. We didn't run today. It kind of depends on the temperatures of people. Usually by September, we've locked them up for the rest of the year. I thought I'd talk about, Diane, you mentioned the large-scale solar. I thought I'd talk a little bit about that. Remember, we voted to be involved with the Red Mesa project, which is on the Navajo land. I think it's the Navajo Tribal Authority that's actually building the project. Groundbreaking is any day. They've done all the design work, and when you work with tribal people, I guess there's a lot of other regulations that need to come into play. But if they can break ground in the next month, they will have it up and going for the spring of 2022. So we're 6 months, 8 months away from having the solar. We have a 5 megawatt interest in that. The price is going to come in. It escalates through. It's at $23 right now. It escalates up to mid 30s in 20 years when the contract's over. So we're looking forward to that coming in. It's going to be around $30 on the average. It's a project of 66 megawatts. We are 5 of the 66, and the other 61 are other UAMPS members that have signed in on that. Now, UAMPS also, because of the popularity of this project, they also went out and tried to pursue or talk to some other developers. There's 2 other solar projects that are being discussed. Nothing committed yet, but they're called the Steel 1 and Steel 2 project, and that's STEELE, has nothing to do with the metal. They're up in Box Elder County, of all places. That's interesting that they'd put a solar up there versus sunny Dixie or somewhere like that. The Steel 1 project was subscribed fast by other cities. Steel 2 project is presently accepting subscription. It's a little more expensive than the Navajo one, but not bad. I mean, we get another large-scale solar for low 30s, $33. It's about what our federal hydro is. It's just not as reliable as as that. So we have the option. We've looked at maybe upping the ante for some of our large-scale solar, but as of right now, I haven't bid at that. Right now, all they're looking for is a nod of the head, or should we continue to pursue that? And UAMPS has been given the marching orders by the rank and file UAMPS members to continue that.
Are they doing anything about battery backup?
I can give you some numbers offhand. I don't know. They are, and they have found that with battery backup, it's in the $80 to $90 range, which is a little bit expensive. Solar alone's around $30, and with the battery backup, it doubles it or a little bit more. Technology is not quite there, but it's coming fast. It is coming fast, and when the battery backup they have now is only like on big scale is 4 hours. You've got to get through the night. Somehow we got to get the battery back up till the sun comes back up. And so that's the issue, but good question. How am I doing on time? 5 minutes?
You're doing great. Thank you.
Okay. Just give me the time line.
Oh, you know me. I'll let you know.
I would never have noticed that. The other project UAMPS is looking at is called Enchant. It's a project that takes the San Juan coal-fired plant. Remember, we have participation in the coal plant down the San Juan Four Corners area that they're going to mothball this coming spring. We will lose 1.6 megawatts of the San Juan plant, and it comes because of the environmental complaints about coal, but also it comes from the California cities that were involved with that had to pull out. Similar to the IPA issue, the California cities just can't bring any type of coal in. Started with IPA, and now these other plants are being shut down as well. A firm has come in, and they think that they can take this old power plant, and I'm not sure the technology they're going to use, but the numbers are coming in pretty sweet in the mid-30 range. And I'm not exactly sure what fuel they're going to use even, but we're interested. I've signed on the bottom line. We'd be interested in 4 or 5 megawatts, and that's how things work is you don't commit anything, but you kind of sign, nod the head and say, yeah, pursue it. And we'll get serious after that. So that's intriguing to me. It'll be a 24-hour day thing. If we can get that in the $30 range long-term for 20 or 30 years, that's sweet. So that's called Enchant. I'll let you know more about that. All right, let's talk. I've got only a couple other. Let me talk about the general health of the department right now. We've moved our public power date October 14th at Pavilion 5. We're going to combine a virtual live and I guess a Zoom and a live celebration, I guess you could say. For example, for the Power Bucks, we're not going to make people be there to win. They can have their entry blank come in, and we'll just do a random drawing by those at the park and also those that are on Zoom. We're going to see how that works. We're going to have prizes online as well as virtual, trying to keep the crowds down somewhat. We're going to have prepackaged food rather than the hot dogs off the grill. We thought that'd be a better way to go, and those types of things. So that's October 14th at the Pavilion.
So kind of a hybrid
Yeah.
meeting. So,
Yeah.
huh.
Last year we did it totally Zoom, and we had 400 or 500 people following us on Facebook because we were giving hundreds of dollars of stuff away and those types of things. So
Yeah.
if it works, we'll do it other years too.
14th.
At the new Pavilion.
Oh, really?
At the new
5?
one. Yeah.
Hmm.
Brand new Pavilion.
Oh, that's cool.
Let's see. There's questions about the Light Up Navajo. Remember we sent crews down there 2 years ago. Last year we were ready to go, but the COVID hit. We are signed up for the first week in May to send a group of people down to the Light Up Navajo. Remember, that's getting power to the reservation. And our guys loved it last time we did it, and they want to do it again. So this first week in May, we were first up because we wanted to get a month or a week that was not too hot. We didn't want to go down there in June or July. So our guys were Johnny on the spot and signed up for that. I mentioned the toolkit.
Wayne, how many people?
We have 4 people going.
Is that what went last time? Or
4 or
5?
5.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4.
Okay.
Yeah. Our guys loved it. The toolkit workshop I mentioned about the UAMPS one that combined with League of Cities and Towns meetings is September 28th. And there'll be ransomware, like I mentioned. And I'll make sure that you get the agenda on this, Jennifer. So I just wanted to introduce that. Let's talk a bit about the job force. We just advertised for an opening for a journey lineman. Usually we get 30 to 40 applicants. We got those. That's all we got. We got 2. And they're both from Utah Valley. And one of them lived quite a ways away from us. And we didn't think he could have too good of a response time if there was an outage, you know. So we interviewed and we've offered a job today to a fellow. We haven't heard back from him yet. We just offered it a couple hours ago. But the thought was, where's the job for us? Where did we go? Journeyman lineman used to be, a high-paying job, and people used to clamor to come to Murray. It's just that there's a lot of movement around, and some people, I don't know. But we were hoping to get more, but we got a good guy that has 17 years experience as a journeyman lineman, and so we'll bring him in. Also, I'm having issues with filling GIS engineering. We've been shorthanded there for quite a while, and I'm trying to get somebody in that area. But overall, we're doing well. Let me talk about the 2 outages we've had. One was on July 22nd, just before the July 24th weekend. We had that big microburst come to your neighborhood, Brett, and caused all kinds of havoc, not only your neighborhood, but through the city. We had people out, probably at the peak, we had 2,500 people out of power, some out for an hour, some out for 7 or 8 hours. By Friday morning, I guess it was, we had most everybody back in power, mainly caused by trees, poles tipping over. We had
Trees uprooted.
Yeah.
Like crazy.
It was crazy. I thought our guys handled it really well. We had the basic outages were up on Brahma Circle. We lost a pole. We lost a pole by the Murray Mansion. And when we lose a pole, it takes a long time to put a pole in the ground. Yeah. But you've got 18 wires coming from different directions. You've got Utopia on it. You've got all these people had to get off the pole before we can get on it.
Well, that night, what was that? I want to say Thursday night, and it was impressive. Dale and I even went through the area, but that night you had people up there working like crazy. We got our power back on around 3 in the morning, okay. And it was stuff that we thought we could be out for a day or two, and then also positive comments to the city. I mean, we talked with Doug and they came through. It was amazing what everyone participated in. And it was great to see the neighbors. They all chipped in and helped everyone chop up the trees and everything and then put them on the curbs and between the power department and all the other departments of the city. It was impressive. Yeah,
we were in contact that night with Public Works. We had some flooding involved and they were there. Sandbaggers, Joey Mitterman from the fire department was calling me every half hour saying, how can I help you? How can I help you? And so we'll just keep people away from live wires.
1 minute.
Okay, let me choose. I might be through.
See, and you couldn't fill 45? Oh,
No, I can go another 10.
you
11.
could probably do an hour.
Let me just talk real quick. We've had a workforce that's kind of changing. We've got 7 guys now doing apprenticeships. There for a while, we were just old codgers down there. And are the journeymen or journeymen. Now we have 7 people going through the apprenticeship school, which is a 4-year deal. We've got 3 linemen going through apprenticeship, and they go 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year. We have got 2 subtechs going through a apprenticeship, same way with the 4 years. And then we have 2 meter guys going through it. And some of these are linemen that are in their 50s that have opted to be a meter man now instead of lineman. I've seen the wisdom of, I want to work inside a little more now than having to climb a pole at 64 years old or whatever. No offense to 64 years old. But anyway, I'm seeing a clean turnover at our power department. It's kind of refreshing to see that type of thing. So we got 2 guys out on COVID right now. I got 5 guys on isolation. So we're okay, but it's hitting us. The COVID's hitting us, and we're dealing with it, and see what happens. Okay. Thanks for the microphone.
Thank you.
Hope that helps a little bit. If you have any questions, email me or whatever.
All right. Next time, maybe an hour? What do you think?
If you find it interesting, I could fill an hour of it.
Well,
I find myself.
we don't talk to you very often, so
don't.
that's why this is
Okay.
such a good forum for us. So
on.
anyway, thank you.
Bring it on.
All right. Okay, our next discussion item is on a text amendment for section 17.48.120, temporary signs. Melinda Greenwood. Welcome, Melinda.
You brought everyone, Zach, Jared.
Ah, the whole crew are part of it. Good to see you guys.
I'm actually going to turn most of the time over to Zach to present both of these items. But did want to let you know that at least on the sign, temporary sign code amendment, this came up, I think it was in June, right after the filing deadline when the clerk's office was asking us questions about the temporary signs. And we had done kind of a full sign code revision in 2019, I think is when it was adopted. And there were some things that I think just kind of snuck past us that once this question came up, we started looking at it, and the sign code was pretty cumbersome as far as tracking temporary signs, which we define as anything that would be up for 90 days or less. And then the practicality of that tracking through stickers. So Zach will go into a little bit more detail on that, but essentially our proposed changes tonight streamline things. They make it easier for staff to administer the sign code, and then also trying to keep some type of a system to track and permit signs that are only going to be up for 90 days or less is a challenge that we just really don't have the time and resources for. And so the short answer was to just kind of simplify everything. So Zach will go over that, and I'll run the PowerPoint while presents.
So she stole most of my presentation. So there you go. We're half done. So, yeah, so we're just here talking about temporary signs tonight, real quick. If you'll go to the next one. So, like Melinda said, in May of 2019, we changed the code in response to a federal Supreme Court case called the Reed versus Town of Gilbert, which stated that we couldn't regulate what was on a sign, like what the words on the sign said. It was a violation of free speech. So we had to do a complete overhaul of the sign code. And it was a big, I don't know if you guys remember, but it's a pretty hefty code. So it was something that we had to look at. And so we kind of missed it. And then Brooke, our city recorder, alerted us that we needed to look at the the temporary signage because there was conflicting code there. One thing said that we had one said that you had to have a permit for a temporary sign. Then another section said, no, you don't need to have a permit for a temporary sign. So we took probably the easier route for suggesting that we don't move forward with requiring a permit for temporary signs. It was something that most people didn't do anyway. They kind of just put them up, not knowing that they needed to do that with the city. So you can go to the next slide. So here's just a couple examples of what we mean by temporary signage. Just these banner signs, grand opening signs, political signs, things of that nature. You can go to the next one. Another thing that we're recommending that we remove are a temporary sticker that was going to go on the temporary signs. Going through different vendors, we couldn't find a type of sticker material that would adhere to that vinyl and be weatherproof at the same time. So it's not very feasible. Every city that I called that had that type of ordinance said, yeah, that's not a thing. We never did it. We couldn't find it. So we're recommending removal of that sticker and the permit requirement. And then let's go to, sorry. Oh, no, go to the next one, please. Thank you. Yeah. So the last, kind of the biggest last thing is that we're clearly stating that signs cannot be located in the public right of way. Typically that goes from sidewalk to sidewalk. So we are recommending that doesn't happen. Originally, it was kind of buried within kind of a paragraph of text in the code. So we broke that out to its own little section to make that as clear as possible for people that have the unfortunate thing of looking at our sign code because it's so big and so behemoth. So if you would go to the next one, please. So the Planning Commission did recommend for approval of this with a 6-0 vote. Nobody voted against it. So if you'll go to the next. Pretty easy. We are recommending, the staff and the Planning Commission are both recommending that this goes forward. Any questions I can answer at the moment?
Is it still 90 days?
Yes.
Okay, well, I've just recently found out that a sign can be in for a longer than 90 days, like 180. So what do you do after 90 days?
So
A political sign is what I'm talking about.
political signs?
Yes.
So it would be,
do you take it down after 90 days and then put it back up? I mean, how does that work if you have a primary?
if you have a primary, it technically shouldn't be up more than 90 days. And I would recommend doing a report of concern so that most likely Mark could go out and check it, make you see if it's been out there. And then it would probably be removed by Mark and then contacting the candidate. Thank you. I was saying representative, all these things in my head, of the candidate, and have them come and pick it up. If they decide to place it again, I think technically that would just be another 90 days at that point.
So,
Your question is I wasn't even thinking this till Diane asked that, but so you say, because if you have a primary, it goes past that. Mm-hmm. Do you take it out, put it back in, or what?
Yeah, you can. So you could take it out and put it back in if you'd like. It really is into the. Yeah, it's really it.
Does that make sense?
No, I mean, you know what would solve that? Ranked choice voting. Just saying.
Listen to that.
I do. It is. It's not intended because I can't. Because of that Supreme Court law, I can't put restrictions on something. Like I can't specifically call out political signs because that requires us to read the sign in order to make a determination. So
then in order to be lawful, we have to take the sign down, have it reported, And then when we're given approval, put it back up again, and then we're allowed 90 more days. I'm confused about that process.
Trust us, I think we're all a little confused by it. That Supreme Court ruling, and Melinda's going to chime in here in a second. But
see
that
that-
Supreme Court ruling really kind of threw a loop for regulating signage. It's kind of a big thing. I'll let Melinda.
Why, before Melinda goes, why can't we just change the code to if there's a primary, you have 180 days? Or is that too easy?
Because I have to read the sign. I have to interpret what the sign says. And that's kind of where we're not allowed as cities to take that approach.
We
And-
could change. We
Go
could
ahead.
change the temporary signs regardless to 120 days
Well, I think that makes
or
more
180
sense.
days.
Yeah.
But the way the Supreme Court case was interpreted is essentially it's a First Amendment right to free speech. So we can't say if you're advertising a restaurant or if you're advertising a campaign candidate, it doesn't matter because you would have to read the content to know whether or not you could apply a standard. So the only standard we could apply is one that's just straight across the board, regardless of what type of sign. And so if the council wanted to have temporary signs that were allowed up to 180 days, I suppose you could do that, or you could do 4 months. But you can't specifically call out one certain type of sign. So we just have the one category of temporary signs. And
Right. I understand.
Yeah.
I get that. What I don't get is having to take out signs and then putting them back for.
it's kind of like people who, by law, you have 48 hours that you can park a vehicle on street. And people just go and move a few feet down or go and park across the street so that they can be in compliance with the law. The way it's written right now, yes, if there was a primary election and then a general election and the candidate wanted to have signs out that exceeded a 90-day time period, to be in full compliance, they would need to go out, pick up their signs, move them to a new location, or I guess get new signs and take old ones down. I mean, it is a little bit silly
Yeah.
if you think about it that way, but it's to be in full compliance with the law. Now, as Zach was, I think, mentioning, we don't really have the resources to do zoning enforcement proactively. So in that case, we would rely on if somebody was concerned that signs had been out for longer than 90 days and they submitted a report of concern or called the city and let us know about that, then we would go out and address the issue.
And what are the repercussions as a result of that? Is there a fine? I mean, I didn't see anything like that, but did I miss
Well,
something?
it would be, I mean, if somebody refused to move their signs, we would just go through the regular code enforcement process like we do with anything else, whether it's weeds or, garbage and debris. We would send out a notice, a couple courtesy notices, and if there was a failure to comply, then we would work with the attorney's office to see if there were other options.
How was the 90 days chosen?
It just was 90 days from previous code that was written. Is that,
Yeah.
Jared, is 90 days a pretty standard for a temp sign?
But it's not, there's no legal requirement that says 90 days.
Like I said, I think you could do it for longer if you wanted to. I mean, June, well. As long as it's the same for everyone. Yeah.
Right. I get
Yeah.
that.
So if the
I saw Janice down there counting like me. I was doing the same thing.
Yeah, I know. I was going to do that. If the restaurant wanted to have their, grand opening sign up for 6 months, then they could. same as a political candidate or, you know, somebody that was supporting some other cause. We would just apply it evenly across the board, regardless of the content.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments, concerns?
Other than I think it makes no sense.
I don't disagree with you at all.
All right. So if we wanted to change that, then
Yeah, if we want to change that, I believe we can just, we would probably do it at the public hearing. Yeah.
Yeah, and you could just make a motion to adopt the ordinance with whatever changes that you want to make. And if you get a second and you vote on it, this goes in place. So if you wanted to change it from 90 to 120, 180, you could do that. You just would include it in the motion.
okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Melinda, it's you again. Discussion on a text amendment for section 17.78, accessory dwelling units.
All right, I'm just going to jump right into it again.
All right.
So I have asked, I am passing down an updated version of the code. We'll get to that in just a moment, but I'll go ahead and get started with the presentations. So why we're here tonight is that the 2021 legislature adopted House Bill 80, passed House Bill 82. This disallows cities from prohibiting ADUs across the board. So all Utah cities must allow attached accessory dwelling units as a permitted use. Also, it prohibits limiting the size of an ADU. So currently, in our current code, we allow for up to 1,000 square feet or 40% of your dwelling, whichever is less. So this prohibits that. This allows for anybody to build any size of ADU they'd like. Additionally, it prohibits requiring more than one parking space for an accessory dwelling unit, attached ADU. So this would go into effect if the cities don't change their codes. This goes into effect across the board October 1st, 2021. So that's why we're here before you now. We've done some drafting while working with the attorney's office. So just a little bit of background. We've adopted, actually stay on that last one for just a second. So the council adopted the current ADU standards in September, almost to the day, September 2009. And so far, since then, we have approved 67 ADUs throughout the city. You can see here on this graph, 2021, we've only approved 3. This was mostly because we were anticipating this legislative action. So what we've done is when people come in for building permits or things, ask them to do a second kitchen covenant while they're getting built, which just limits saying that they're not going to be renting out their space or whatever until this new code is adopted. So so far this year, we've had 13 second kitchen covenants. A large portion of that are anticipated to convert over to ADUs once the new legislation is passed. So I think it's going to be probably a tie year, if not a break year, for the largest one, which was in 2018.
Zach, did you say how many since 12 years ago? 60 something?
67, yeah.
Which is not a lot.
It
doesn't sound like a lot.
It
but
doesn't sound like a lot. A lot of these are done without permits.
Okay.
A lot of these existed prior to what we would normally call an accessory dwelling unit. There's plenty of houses that were built in the 60s that have granny flats attached to them. And just hadn't gone through that.
So I was going to ask
process.
you. Okay.
So
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, we can go to the next one. So before we get too deep into it, I just kind of wanted to give you a definition of what ADUs are. Like I mentioned, they're often called granny flats, mother-in-law apartments, things like that. They are separate living quarters from the existing home, the existing single-family home. But in our code, we do require that they have the same address and same utility connections so that it doesn't appear as a duplex. A duplex would be separated, utilities, separate addresses, things like that. So ADU is not allowed to have those things. And that was something that was in the House Bill 82 was saying that yes, you could do these things to make sure that they're owner occupied, things like that. Then also there are two main types. I've kind of gone over this a little bit. There's attached ADUs, which is on your left-hand side, which means it's attached to the house. It's in the basement. It's above an attached garage, anything like that. Detached means it's wholly separated from the property or from the main dwelling unit. So these are what a lot of people see. Sometimes, we don't allow for it, but, on a detached garage above it, things like that. If you remember the show Growing Pains, he lived in an ADU above the garage. So if you'll go to the next, please. So now we'll kind of get into some of the regulations. So for attached ADUs, we've broken the ADU ordinance into two sections, attached ADUs and detached ADUs. And so in the attached ADUs, this is where a large portion of the regulations just kind of went away to make sure that we comply with state code. So we've removed sorry, I can't see the thing very well. Removed the size limitation, removed the allowed number of bedrooms. That was another thing. So they can have more than two. Right now we require no more than two. This will remove that. And then also reduce the parking to just one for attached ADUs. So a normal single family home would be a total of 3. So you have your 2 off-street parking spaces that's required by zoning ordinance, and then the 1 for the ADU. And then we did add a section that we've been wanting to add for a long time, which is that allowing ADUs to be permitted in zones that allow for single family residences as a permitted use. So for example, if you have a single family residence in an RM10 zone, which allows for multifamily, that single family residence can still apply for an ADU. You'd be surprised at how many questions we get from people saying, I'd like to do an ADU. And we're like, sorry, you can't, you're in a multifamily zone. So this was one change where we thought we could make, or at this point, we can make that change. So if you'll go to the next.
Zach, let me go back to the parking. So you said that there was, without the ADU, you're allowed how many again with single family?
You're required to have 2.
With the ADU.
With the ADU, you're required to have 3.
Okay, so you're required to have 3.
Yeah. So just 1 additional.
And that's from the state mandate.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Because in the original code that was passed in 2009, we required 2 off-street parking spaces. So we're reducing that by 1 in the attached.
Okay.
So in the detached, if you look on the next slide, almost everything stayed the same. So you have to have a 12,000 square foot lot size, the 1,000 square foot or 40% of the main dwelling, whichever is less. Sorry, I can't read that one. No more than 2 bedrooms and the 2 additional off-street spaces. So that would require 4 for a single family residence. And then the one change, the one major change here is that for detached ADUs, we are recommending that the conditional use permit requirement be removed. So it's going to be an administrative, just through staff level. So as long as you meet all these requirements, you get approved through an ADU permit that we're working on developing. So that was kind of one of the state mandates, is that it needed to be a permitted use. So this is just kind of streamlining so that we're not taking some to the planning commission, some not. This just allows it to go this way. It also cuts through some red tape where we don't have to schedule them before the planning commission and make them wait 3 weeks, a minimum of 3 weeks before they get a hearing and all that fun stuff.
So staff can just approve them.
Yeah, staff would be able to just approve it.
That makes sense.
And then again, this is the same thing with the in the multifamily zones, as long as it's a single family residence, can have a detached ADU as well. So if you go to the next one. So this is why I passed out the handout here. So on page 7, you'll see a blue box highlighted. So regarding short-term rentals, the state has said that we can actually regulate this and view short-term rental sites in order to make sure an ADU is not being used as like an Airbnb or a VRBO or what have you. And we strongly support that shouldn't be the case. However, spoiler alert, the Planning Commission has recommended denial on our short-term rental ordinance. In the original ordinance for the accessory dwelling units, I referenced that short-term rental code, saying that, the fees are outlined there. But because of that and not knowing the action that the council may take in the future, we decided as staff to just put those fees into the code. So that blue box on page 7 is just showing exactly what was changed from the code that was provided to you in your packet. It copies exactly as it is in the short-term rental ordinance. So I'll just kind of go over that briefly. Just, your first occurrence being caught is $500. Your second is $750. Your third is an additional $750 and removal of your ADU permit. And then if you're caught any more times than that third, then you're not allowed you're revoked and you're not allowed to have an ADU permit, and you'll have to revert that space back into your regular house. So, any questions on that part? That can be kind of confusing. Yeah.
Can you explain again just what the difference is between ADUs and short-term rentals? I just want to kind of hear what your interpretation is of that.
Yeah. So a short-term rental would be like anybody could take a portion of their house, say like a bedroom or 2 bedrooms, and rent that out as a short-term rental on Airbnb. They could rent out the entire house as an Airbnb. But an ADU, that's what we hope to get out of this, is to help with the housing market here in the city, which is provide longer term. Somebody like my mother-in-law or my father-in-law. Yeah, mother-in-law, father-in-law. A lot of people rent out to friends or whatever, but it's more than 30 days at a time. That's the main thing, is that we want to see those rentals happen for more than 30 days at a time, where a short-term rental is less than 30 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just to add on to that, one of the things that the state legislature has actually allowed us to do with the changes that they've passed in the bill earlier this year is to regulate this through the short-term rental sites. Several years ago, the legislature came in and took away a city's ability to really regulate any of the short-term rentals. So the underlying message between that is that they're really wanting these accessory dwelling units to be long-term living units for residents here in Murray, in Salt Lake County, in the state, rather than people that are coming in from outside, renting them for 2 or 3 nights or a week at a time to ski and then leaving. So that's really the motivation for what we've put in the code, and then the reason why the state has given us the ability to actually regulate these to ensure that they're not short-term rentals.
Cool. And then if we can go to were there any other questions on that section?
I had a follow-up question. So this would be different than doing code for short-term rentals, correct?
Correct.
This is just specified for ADUs.
Yep. So this is if an ADU is operating as a short-term rental, and if for some reason the short-term rental ordinance that may be coming later does not get approved, then we still have this fallback that allows us to pursue ADUs. If somebody's using an ADU for that short-term rental, then we can use this code to cite
it up.
for.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so if we can go to the next one. So for an accessory dwelling unit permit, we are requiring a few things like a site plan, floor plan showing us, where this is going to be located, as well as affidavits that I've kind of written it all as one affidavit so far. I don't have a copy for you yet or anything like that, but it kind of states that it's going to be owner occupied. That's one of the things that hasn't changed in our ADU ordinance. The owner of the property has to live on site or in either thing, the ADU or the home. So they have to live in one of those. So we request that they sign an affidavit saying they are going to do that. Also, we are having them sign an affidavit saying they're not going to operate as short-term rentals. So we have that written record. So if it's ever caught, we can use that.
Now, Zach, you said request, or do we require?
We'll require. I'm
Okay.
sorry. Yes,
Okay, that's
require.
okay.
And then let's see. Yeah. Application, just on the application itself, just, what type of ADU it is. Is it attached or detached? Just helps us keep track of things because I'm a numbers person. I keep spreadsheets of everything. So I like to keep track of what we're doing. So you can go to the next. Yeah. So these are the staff findings. In the general plan specifically, it does say to continue supporting ADUs. So I think this is a good step moving forward. Also, the Planning Commission voted, I believe, 5-0 July 1st at their July 1st meeting to forward a positive recommendation to the council. And so we are recommending that you adopt the proposed changes that I've kind of outlined to you guys here and approve the ordinance going forward. Questions, comments?
Can I ask 2 questions?
Please.
So first, this kind of flew past me, but you said something about them having the same address.
Mm-hmm.
Is there an indicator like an A and a B for that address where they can differentiate, or what are the rules there?
Yeah, so typically we don't allow them to have an A or B, definitely not like a unit A and B, but we haven't been very super strict on that as a city. We haven't been terribly strict. So,
Is there, what's the rationale for that? I just don't know.
to continue making sure that they aren't being seen as duplexes. We don't want them to operate, feel, or work as a duplex. They're supposed to be, at least before this House bill thing, ADUs were supposed to be subordinate to the main dwelling.
Right.
And so that's what we were trying to intend there, is to make sure that that continues to be subordinate to the main dwelling.
Okay. I would love them to be able to do an A or something just in that for family childcare.
Sure.
We have rules on how we regulate if you don't have a separate address for someone living in that space.
Sure.
And so just my very niche concern about that. My other question is variances are crossed off. Is there no process for variances with the current code?
In the current code, so variances are a very tricky thing in Utah. When this code was written, I think it was before the variance language changed. I'm not 100% sure on that, but variances, the state has dictated what can constitute as a variance, and you have to meet 5 tests, and those tests are very hard. Typically, those have to be something unique about the land itself to qualify for a variance, where in other states, variances are granted left and right. The state was concerned with the amount of variances that were being given. So I took that out because we can't use that as a basis when the state dictates how we can do variances.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. I'm excited about, I think this really encourages the possibility of more intergenerational living and a lot of challenges I've seen people have. So I'm excited about it. But
yeah, it's been my pet project for a while. So I love ADUs.
Zach, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
And if you don't have the answer, we can maybe get it when you bring it for a public hearing. But I was a little confused when the state did this mandate, and I had heard that it overrides the HOA. Say no HOA says it has to be family that's living in there, which I've seen before. Does that really override?
I believe it does. Yeah,
It does override.
Do you recall, Jared? If I'll double check. I'll double check through the code, but I think it did override HOAs. I remember
That's what
something in there.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
I know, crazy. Thought HOAs were all
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, they made. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
We'll continue on. Number 4 is discussion on police salaries. Dale Cox and Robin Colt. Robin?
Okay, thank you. I wanted this put on. I want to thank you for putting this on the agenda. After Chief Burnett brought up the need to revisit our compensation for our police officers because other cities had raised theirs considerably, we're starting to either lose officers or there's a chance we'll lose officers. So we listened to the presentation the other day, and as I thought about it over the week, I thought about the officers that weren't included in this. So I reached out to the mayor's office and talked to him about it, talked to the administration and asked them if they would consider revamping the budget opening to include these officers, which they did. And Robin went through the process. So if you would take a few minutes and explain how we went through this and how we came up with the new numbers.
Yeah, you bet. Sorry, I should stand in front of the microphone. So when it was brought to my attention, we wanted to adjust the top end as well as the bottom end. I think we were really concerned because the bottom end of the police range was moving up considerably from where we were, and we were about 15% under. We took that starting point and built out the step plan. So it wasn't as simple as just tacking on a step on the end for the top end of our police officers. But in order to maintain the integrity of our step system, it was maintaining the philosophy that we provide pay increases at the starting end of the police scale, 5% till you get to mid-range, and then 2.5% from there. So taking the starting point of what was presented to you by Chief Burnett 2 weeks ago and building that plan up, that's how this plan was created. And so this does address those who are sitting at the top end who wouldn't previously have received increases under the first proposal we gave to you. So if you see on there, the annual cost presented to you 2 weeks ago was around $412,000, and this would add another $185,000 to the plan to adjust not only the bottom end of the scale but the top end.
And that keeps our step plan in line, you said.
Right. So before I included on the handout, it showed that we were down by 3% on the top end. So under this new proposal, it puts us actually 1.87% above the average. So kind of in line with all the other agencies, we fall about number 4 in the agencies
Perfect.
in the valley.
Okay, thanks, Robin.
Yeah, thank you, Robin. To my little mind, I thought it was an easy thing to do. And then once I saw the wheels start to go, it's not that easy. But thanks to you, Brenda, and the administration for taking that and adding that to the budget so we don't lose our seasoned officers as well. I mean, we're taking care of the younger officers, and I think it's important that we show the appreciation to our seasoned officers for sticking with us as long as they have. So thanks for everybody for the work that went into this.
Good call, Dale.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, we'll be hearing it at the council meeting, which will be about 6:30. Okay. Announcements, Jennifer? No announcements? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.